You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith.
Hey Sprouts, it's Father K here again. It's February 18th, it's a Tuesday, and I'm filling in for Nancy. So last week, I talked a little bit about the priesthood and how I began to think about the priesthood. And I mentioned that I didn't really know what the priest was or what the priest actually did. And in order to help you understand a little bit more about what the priest does, I want to tell you a story. This is a story about Tommy. Every Sunday, Tommy's family drove to a funny-looking building with a lowercase t on the roof of it. Tommy knew it was a T because he had just finished first grade and he knew how to write and read all the letters. His teacher had told his parents, "Tommy is a very good speller and he has quite the imagination. Perhaps he'll be a writer one day." But Tommy did not want to be a writer. He wanted to be a superhero or a ninja or a knight. Tommy didn't necessarily like going to the funny building with the T on top. But one Sunday, that all changed. His family had arrived a little bit early. Well, that is to say, they had actually arrived on time for once. And that's when Tommy saw a man, all dressed in black, like a ninja, enter into a special room he had never seen before. Tommy wondered what he was doing in that room and wished that he could go inside and see. But he knew he wasn't allowed. A few minutes later, the ninja left the room. Or was it someone else? He had the same face, but he was dressed completely different. He was wearing all sorts of robes and strings and colors and a cape that fluttered behind him as if there were a blowing breeze. He was a superhero. Tommy began to wonder what sort of superpowers the superhero had. One simply does not dress like that without something to show for it. Suddenly there was a blast of music from the organ. It was unlike any music Tommy had ever heard on the radio. It almost sounded like angels singing. At least he assumed that's what angels sounded like. The superhero walked slowly and deliberately down a long aisle to what appeared to be some sort of arena, like a big boxing ring. There seemed to be hundreds of people gathered to watch whatever fight was going to take place. Tommy looked for the bad guy, but he didn't see anyone. He strained. He stood in his seat, but he saw nothing. Oh no. It must mean that the bad guy was invisible. Invisible bad guys are the worst. Did the hero know? Should Tommy tell him? He could be walking right into a trap. Tommy was about to shout out when the hero made his first move. He knelt on one knee, as if he were picking up something off the ground. Some secret weapon? A hidden dagger? Dust? That was it. It was a secret power. He had lowered himself to make the bad guy, invisible though he was, think that he was weak. It was a brilliant strategy. Yes, he rose and walked up the stairs into the sacred fighting ground. The superhero looked as if he were marching to his death. Yet he was strangely serene. What confidence, Tommy thought. Then the superhero bowed before the great and fancy table in the middle of the arena and kissed it, as if he were kissing his mom, or like a soldier kissing his sword before battle. Tommy didn't know what that table was, but he knew that it would end up being very important for this battle. Then, one of the superhero's assistants handed him a sweet-smelling smoke on the end of a long chain. Another weapon, Tommy thought. Was it a mace? Only knights in armor used those. Maybe he was a knight, too. He walked all around that fancy table, flinging that smoke everywhere, perhaps to chase off the invisible enemy. Obviously, the smoke was to lay down some sort of cover so that the enemy couldn't see him as well. Tommy knew that because that's what he would do if he was a ninja knight superhero. Then the superhero went to the corner of the ring and, in a sing-song battle chant, waved his right hand over himself. It must have been some sort of shield, a force field to protect himself. Then he turned towards the spectators and opened his once folded hands from over his heart and addressed the people. Tommy felt a surge of power. Wait a minute. They weren't spectators. They were participants. If he would have known that, he would have worn his own cape. Instinctively, Tommy returned the incantation. Was it just him? Or did the superhero seem to grow larger, like power was returning to him? He uttered another battle cry with his arms spread apart in what must have been his fighting stance, and then he collapsed into his seat. He must have been exhausted. End of round 1, Tommy thought. We'll continue the story tomorrow.
That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God created you to be. Well, I hope you are enjoying listening to Father K this week. As you listen, I have 2 challenges for you to work through all week long. First of all, pray very hard for priests, particularly for the priest that serves your parish. And next, spend time in prayer, contemplating if God is calling you to a vocation in the priesthood or religious life. Wonder about that. Ask God and spend time having Him answer that question for you.